It's no secret that starting a business is hard. Even if you have an amazing idea, bringing it to life can feel overwhelming. With HubSpot's new entrepreneurship kit, though, you can go from idea to IPO with the help of a company that knows a thing or two about growing better. The all-inclusive kit gives you step-by-step guidance and frameworks to help you crush every stage of starting a business, with tools tailored to help all along the entrepreneurial journey. It's packed with templates for project management, email, and skill development. Wow, that's a lot of templates. There's also a solopreneur guide. It's got freelance pricing worksheets and lots more you can get up and running immediately. And best of all, it's free. With expert guidance and frameworks from HubSpot, starting a business doesn't have to be so hard. So don't wait to start yours. Go to HubSpot.com/ENT to download the guide right now.
Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, August 14th. I'm Mark Dent here with Katherine Laidlaw, and this is the Hustle Daily Show. Later this week, disruption is coming for the real estate industry. A landmark legal settlement goes into effect on August 17th that will make it easier for buyers and sellers to negotiate commission rates rather than accept what had basically been a default commission of 6% that was typically paid by the home seller. So will these changes cause a mass exodus of realtors from the industry? Will housing prices actually start to go down? We're going to get to that in a bit, but first, let's give you the hits and headlines in business and tech. Starting off, there was a huge story on Tuesday. Starbucks fired its CEO and poached Brian Niccol, who turned Chipotle around after a major food poisoning scandal. And this is where things got crazy, Katherine, because this announcement prompted two huge changes.
That's right. So Starbucks stock actually jumped more than 24% after the announcement came down, which is a more than $20 million vote of confidence in Niccol. No pressure. Chipotle stock likewise was down 8%.
Yeah, I mean, I just did not realize how big of a deal people considered Niccol to be. But I mean, the numbers right there show it. And frankly, I thought that outside of the whole norovirus food scandal from a few years ago for Chipotle, this is the low point for Chipotle because of all their shrinkflation that they've been doing, I thought.
Right. And I don't know if you've been on the internet lately, but if you have, you've seen the memes that have sort of taken over. People are mocking this announcement mercilessly because the last thing Niccol was in the news for was answering to people's critiques of Chipotle shrinking their meal portion sizes. And so now there's all these very cute, I must say, Starbucks drink in miniature sort of memes floating around and people wondering whether that's going to be the new thing they can expect when they go in and order a venti. Is like a venti that you'd see in a Christmas village.
Yeah, and it's funny because baristas have been under so much pressure at Starbucks over the last few years because of all the to-go orders, because of the different drink combinations that have gone viral on TikTok and just seem like a nightmare to make. And now I feel like they might have to deal with people being like, is there enough liquid in my cup? So it may not be fun for them. We'll see.
Brian Niccol, Godspeed.
All right, well, let's move on here to some other news. Neon Money's Club Score, which is a dating app for people with good credit, has shuttered after 6 months and 8,000 matches. This isn't a surprise, though, because the app was actually only meant to last for 90 days and was popular enough to go on for a bit longer. Into the auto industry, Ford and Mazda issued do not drive warnings for 450,000 vehicles with recalled Takata airbags until owners complete a free repair. Defective Takata airbags have killed 27 people and injured at least 400 in the US. In entertainment, Paramount will lay off 15% of US staff. That's 3,000 workers. This all comes in an effort to reduce annual costs by $500 million ahead of Paramount's merger with Skydance. And in a minute here, we're going to talk about real estate, but we do have one other real estate story here about the San Jose metro area. The median home price there hit $2.08 million last quarter, which is the first time that a U.S. metro area has ever exceeded $2 million and is way too much money for a house. That is for sure. Finally, the British Museum made a really, really bad mistake, says the British Museum. An internal investigation found that the museum broke national laws by poorly safeguarding national treasures. And Katherine, this story's been kind of brewing for a while.
Yeah, so this result comes on the heels of a story that broke about 6 months ago in Art News. A former curator at the museum stole nearly 2,000 items worth an estimated $130,000 over the course of about a decade. And I am curious sort of what happens when you yourself declare that you have broken the law. It'll be sort of interesting to see how they penalize an institution rather than the people that work there. The former curator obviously is no longer employed there and presumably was saving up to buy a house perhaps in the San Jose metro area. I have to say $130,000 is nothing to sniff at, but over the course of 10 years, it's not the rate of return that I would have expected.
That's very true. Not exactly the highest of stakes. All right, well, let's move on to other things that are expensive and things that cost a lot more than $130,000. Houses. Anybody who's sold a house for the last several decades knows the drill. You hire a realtor, you sell to a buyer with a realtor, and then when the sale goes through, you cough up around 5 to 6% of the sale price to the agents. There is rarely a discussion about the rates or even about who pays the commission, because it's pretty much always the seller. But over the last few years, the National Association of Realtors and several brokerages have faced antitrust lawsuits from sellers, suggesting that that practice is anti-competitive. Now, after a settlement in April, changes are going to kick in for the industry this week. So, Katherine, first off, tell me exactly how did things used to work in the real estate industry when it came to selling homes and buying them?
So, in the past, a seller's agent would charge home sellers a fee, usually 5 or 6%, like you mentioned, of a home's overall purchase price. And that was intended to be shared with the buyer's agent. Mm-hmm. That meant that someone selling their home could be on the hook for a fairly serious outlay. So a seller of $1 million home, for example, might pay out $60,000 in commissions. Some experts have tied that into homes listing prices, suggesting that the sort of set commission rate inflated the prices of homes for sale because that rate would sort of be baked in to what the price was listed at.
And one thing I'll add to that is I use the term realtor, and we're also saying real estate agent, and most people use them interchangeably. But realtor is a capital R. That's why it's the National Association of Realtors. Most agents, they become realtors. And so they're part of the same trade organization. And that's part of the reason for why this lawsuit was against the National Association of Realtors. And in the way that it used to be, it's like you have a realtor on one side and a realtor on another who are both part of this same group that are sharing this fee. There was always just like these optics that were kind of, I think, squishy, in addition to the fact that obviously, as these lawsuits claimed, it was an anti-competitive practice. So what is going to change? I've been reading a little bit about this for a while, and it seems kind of confusing to me. So are we not going to have to pay such a large fee if we're buying or if we're selling? What's actually going to happen, Kath?
So I definitely think you're not the only one who's confused. Some analysts, after the news came out that this was going to come into effect this week, have called this part of the process the messy middle. And so I think it's going to get messier maybe before it gets clearer. However, what we know so far is that basically the selling realtor is no longer mandated to split the commission with the buyer's agent. That fee is completely uncoupled from the transaction, which means fees have to be negotiated by the seller for their agent and by the buyer for their agent individually. So what's different, for example, if you're looking to buy a home, is that you'll need to sign a legal agreement right from the jump with your agent, where normally the buyer just wouldn't really have to worry about it because the costs would be borne by the seller. One upside to this is that it might bring down prices because buyers and sellers now have the power to shop around for lower rates. And so realtors will have to offer more competitive rates. We'll see what those rates end up being. But I think that the experts are suggesting that listing prices might come down because they won't have the commission rate baked in the same way.
Obviously, this is something that's not really kicked in yet. There's been certainly some anecdotal instances where buyers and sellers have, I think, done some more negotiating than people did in the past. But this is going to kick in really on August 17th. So not for a couple more days, and it's going to take forever for us to really see what the trends are. But I'm curious, besides the fact that, buyers and sellers, and particularly buyers, can kind of shop around for lower rates, like What are analysts saying could actually happen to the industry?
So, one analysis that was done back in March in advance of the settlement in April concluded that real estate commissions could fall between 25 and 50%, actually. And that the change could also pave the way for real estate companies with alternative business models in place. So, like flat fee or discount brokerages to actually thrive and have a fighting chance in a way that they haven't had before under the traditional model. CNN did some reporting that suggested that some realtors believe the new set of rules will reward more experienced realtors, shutting out younger agents because homebuyers might be nervous about signing a legally binding agreement that ties them to a more inexperienced realtor. But there are some ways around that. And so I think that that is more maybe fear of the unknown than anything right now.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The experienced realtors always have a huge advantage anyway. So I'll be curious to see if that does happen. If people are like, well, now I'm especially going to go with an experienced realtor and give them even more of an advantage. I do wonder, though, are there any things that buyers should kind of look out for? Because they're the ones who I think are facing the more drastic change here. The seller knows that they're going to have to pay a fee. They've done that forever. But buyers might not realize this new world that they're going to be in.
Yeah, totally. So one thing I think is super important for buyers to keep in mind is that they don't have to sign a legally binding agreement that dictates a commission rate right from the get-go. They can sign contracts with realtors that look any number of different ways. So for periods running for a few days to a few months, there are options to sign something called a touring contract, which means you can go on tours and test out the realtor and see what you think of your working relationship before signing anything that would actually guarantee how much commission they'd receive on a house. The final tip that experts have recommended just from reading around today is that buyers should look really carefully at all contracts and documents in case fees are presented in the fine print, because we are sort of heading into a period of unknown in this instance. And I think it's, like we said, going to be a little messy at the beginning. And so educating yourself on what you're agreeing to right away can only help.
That all sounds good, except for having to look closer at more paperwork, because anyone who's bought a house before knows that it's more paperwork than you'll ever look at probably in your life.
Ever. Drowning in paperwork.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor today is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We've got a lot more tech and business coverage in our newsletter, so if you're not subscribed, please go get signed up at thehustle.co/email, and we will see you tomorrow.
Hey everybody, I've been listening to this awesome podcast lately called Entrepreneurs on Fire. It's hosted by John Lee Dumas, and it's available right now on the HubSpot Podcast Network. Entrepreneurs on Fire stokes inspiration and shares strategies to fire up your entrepreneurial journey and create the life that you've always dreamed of. It offers lots of energy, value, consistency, and it's for anybody who wants to learn more about entrepreneurship. It's super fast-paced and packed with valuable stories about entrepreneurs, their aha moments, their failures, and everything to what's working for them today. Recently, he had on this guest, Ashley Stahl, who talked all about her job at the Pentagon and how she evolved into becoming a top 100 TEDx speaker. She talks about evolving your brand from the ground up, leaning into the skills that you already have to build your brand, and also creating virality. It's a great listen. You should check it out. And you can listen to Entrepreneurs on Fire wherever you get your podcasts.